I'm honored to introduce first Isaac, Nico, and Andy from Eat Kipu from Latin America, and they will talk about the challenges and opportunities of staking in underrepresented regions. Welcome.
Can we have? Yep.
It's plugged in.
Okay.
No?
1 second, we are live.
Bizim şey alabilir miyim? Kontrolü. Yeah, I know. I saw it's on screen. Okay, can you close this and check your screen settings? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. I think it went a little bit annoyed when we unplugged and plugged back. Yeah.
Thanks. Well, thank you everyone, and thank you for being here. Today, we are going to be chatting about our experience trying to grow a community of node runners and validators in Latin America, and how other regions may be or may learn from it. To begin with, I think it's important to just have a picture of Latin America that is very particular to us in some senses, but I think it's also we can see some of that in other regions all around the world. In our case, in general, we are Latin America is mostly composed of developing countries, third world countries. We have some very hard and political and economic issues all around. We can see examples in Venezuela. We can see examples in Argentina. Now, even Guatemala has been having some political issues. Panama as well. And at least economically, we are very dependent on remittances. Even my parents moved to Spain just to be able to work and send all the money that they made back to the island, for example. Which this means is that crypto, we have a very strong value proposition for all of us there. And we can also see these in the countries where they have the most economic issues. They also have the most adoption. Let's say Argentina, again, for a very clear example. Now, to be more specific, in crypto, we are the 7th biggest market. We move around 562 billions, at least that was from 2021 to 2022. And that represented a 40% growth over 2020 and 2021, and that just keeps growing. 5 of the top 30 countries in the adoption index, crypto adoption index by Chainalysis, are also in Latin America. And like I said, better store of values, protection against inflation, remittances, and others are the main reason to use crypto. And that's very, very important, that's very common. But unfortunately, we do so via centralized exchanges. It's the best UI, it's very simple. But that also means that we need to sort of protect ourselves against them, at least in the realm of Ethereum security and staking. Now I'll pass it over to Andy.
Thanks. So yes, 51% of LATAM has used cryptocurrencies in the past, which is awesome. And that represents 4% of the global population, yet less than 0.65% of the Ethereum validators are in Latin America. So that represents a very asymmetric composition between usage and contributing to the security, to the network, to even just technically and other communities or involvement within the broader Ethereum ecosystem. And we can see, according to NodeWatch, and the one on the left is a map of megalabs. It's just like, what's the distribution, geographic distribution of validators around the world? And we can see huge clusters in Europe, in North America. That's not in use, but a lot of them are in data centers, a lot of them in like 1 or 2 in the US and in Germany. And that's not great, not only because of involvement, but also for other challenges that we're gonna see. In Latin America, there's still a lot of misconceptions of crypto. There's still a lot of misconceptions about what is validating. There's still a lot of lack of resources that exist. Like most of the resources, as we know, exist on English, and there's a huge barrier of language, just not only technical, but also for language, just to understand this topic. And one of the biggest adoption barriers that we've seen of people getting involved is the 32 ETH economic barrier. So I know there are many projects, and we're all trying together to lower that, but that's a huge reality that maybe we misrepresent or are not as aware when we talk in other regions, which is still a good amount of money, but it's achievable. For most people, this is like many times their lifetime value that they can save for their families. Like 10, 20 people saving, it's just unachievable. So that's a challenge. If we want a Buster to make the most decentralized network in the world, we have a challenge. And we want to keep beating the drums on this narrative that geographic diversity is very important, maybe as important or related to client diversity. And this is something that we have started to see. We want client diversity because we want redundancy. We want to have separation or resilience if there's a bug in one client and there's not another. Well, something similar we get from geographic diversity. Whereas in client diversity, we get technical resilience. With geographic diversity, we get social and legal resilience. So you see the two biggest like regions of like validating is Europe and North America. If there was a collision in legal aspects, well, imagine over 80% of the network being against Ethereum, you know? And you know, there's already a lot of alignment. It's like sharing the code base between Europe and North America. We share a lot of like legal alignment and political alignment. So that's a challenge. See the opportunity in other regions, Asia, Oceania, Latin America, Africa. You see the percentage is really, really small. So yes, there's a big opportunity on increasing the resilience of Ethereum by increasing the geographic diversity the same way that we try to increase the client diversity. And yes, as we get client concentration, we can also get geographic concentration, which we have at the moment. We saw the OFAC challenge that we had 1 year ago is one of the best examples of how like laws in a country affect the whole network. Whereas if we had a more diverse geographic network, we will get less effect on people. We also had sanctions on like MetaMask not allowing users from Venezuela accessing the network RPC nodes. That's all legal challenges that if we had more validators and local nodes in the region, I'll be much more accessible. And just moments ago, we were talking about, like, I remember here on the public that there's a counter incentive of being concentrated, so you have low latency with your peers. And if you're in regions like Bangkok or Latin America, even if you want to participate, you get some penalties because the rest of the world is like further away. So there seems to be like some tension between performance and wanting to be all concentrated and decentralization and resilience and performance. So yeah, how do we try to solve it? We'll still have to talk about, but yes, even today we have lowered, and that's a great achievement from our network. We have lowered from almost 80% of OFAC compliant to 30-something%, but that's still 1/3 of blocks that are OFAC compliant. So we need to be better if we want to keep beating the drum and teaching, sending the narrative of decentralization, censorship resistance, etc. So that's why we are talking here. I'll pass it to Nico.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, well, and let's talk now about like what efforts are being taken to solve this issue. And well, we will start talking about the organization we're part of, ETHKipu, the, let's say, community of communities, Ethereum communities in Latin America, and specifically us. We're working on the vertical called Kipu stakers. It's kind of like ETH staker, but specifically for Latin America. And we've been since like for a year now, we've been taking efforts in both education and operational support to decentralize the network geographically. And I'm going to mention some of the efforts that we've taken to do this. Well, educational, we've been hosting Twitter or X spaces with different leaders in the industry, like staking and node operators, to explain to the public, like from different perspectives, from different projects, to understand better the current status of staking, like what are some of the innovations going on, and the importance of these innovations in lowering the barrier for people in underrepresented regions to also be able to stake and run nodes. Well, in the educational efforts, we've also translated ETH staker knowledge base and Rhino review, as well as having like virtual and IRL presentations and workshops. So that's talking about Kipu stakers, but if we talk about like initiatives from bigger projects, let's say the Ethereum Foundation made a campaign called Run a Node grants, where they were giving grants and kind of like machines for people to be able to run to become solo stakers. Same for EtherFi that run Operation Solo Staker with a similar goal and with different characteristics, but super interesting to see that like these big players are also taking efforts in allowing other like people in these regions to run nodes and that way decentralize the network geographically. So aside from that, there's also like big efforts to make staking or running nodes more accessible. Well, with simple things, but very impactful, like improving the user experience or the user interface. And one that's, as I mentioned, like super important, lowering the barrier of 32 ETH that needs to be staked to run a node, because, well, if we really want to make a difference in these regions, we definitely need to make sure that it's accessible for them. And, well, if the network gets more and more value over time, these 32 ETH are going to be harder and harder to get. So we need to make sure that everyone in those regions are also able to afford running a node or staking. So how are we doing so far? Well, we've definitely given more awareness and actual education of what staking means in the region. Like, we're seeing this in the activity of Discord channels, where people are starting to ask questions, are starting to engage a lot more. So there's also like a increased interest in these operations, even in the bear market, which is very, very interesting. There's a lot of people who are discovering this world, like both very technically savvy and not so much. So that's also a challenge to make sure that we educate people equally from both sides. Through these programs, there has been an increase of around like 50% in node count, and we've also sparked the interest of universities and institutions to participate in this. Like a few universities have reached out that they want to run nodes. Their blockchain clubs want to experiment with that. So that's also a big part of like these staking campaigns that are, or node running campaigns that are being led by these other projects. So aside from that, with Kipu stakers, we started to experiment a little bit with running our own DVT cluster. These ones on testnet, but we had 5 machines in 5 different countries, and well, now it's on testnet, but we're waiting to gather those 32 ETH to make sure that we can also run it on mainnet. So well, if anybody's willing to support there, like, you're welcome to reach out to us and help us with that goal that we have. And well, the idea is as Kipu stakers that, well, we will run this as an experiment, but also we will share all the experience that we've gathered by doing this, like all the operational support that we can give to the community based on this experience, and to make sure that this experiment replicates in many regions. Like, maybe we start like with a bunch of clusters across Latin America, but maybe we can start running clusters within countries or within cities eventually. So we have like a bunch of different clusters in different with different setups in different regions. Well, in Latin America and also across the world. Yeah, and well, we have to think like what's next to kind of like increase the decentralization of the geographic decentralization of the network. And as Andy mentioned, an important part of it is to strengthen the P2P latency between nodes, and well, for that there's need to invest in infrastructure to make sure that this is possible. And also there needs to be taken a big effort in using universities and local communities as the places for experimentation and innovation, to make sure that these, well, coordinate between those also to make sure that these things happen, and like that there's, well, both interest and kind of operational experience so that people can execute as well. And yeah, well, this can be leveraged with the individual's interest of like being part of something together. I mean, like really leveraging the idea of Ethereum being a protocol for human coordination. Like, we can bring this to real life by allowing people to coordinate and collaborate, and create this sense of community, of belonging between each other. That's well, a beautiful experience actually that we have experienced ourselves when we were experimenting with the DVT. So yeah, would encourage everyone to reach out if they want to do it, or if they want to experiment on their own, to do it as well. So for us, what's next? Well, of course, we will continue with our educational efforts, the X spaces, the translations, and there's a course coming soon to, well, spread this knowledge and more operational experience to people. We are still gonna participate very actively and encourage our community members to participate actively in these node and staking projects like EtherFi, Operation Solo Staker, the Lido Community Lifeguards, and well, we're fostering a close relationship with more projects like DAppNode, Diva, etc. So as mentioned, because some universities reached out, we are looking to start some programs with these universities to help them and their blockchain clubs to run nodes and give them all the knowledge that they need, or access to the resources that they need to do this, maybe in collaboration with these projects that we mentioned before. As said just now, like, get our DVT cluster on mainnet. Please reach out if you're interested in supporting that effort, and continue doing workshops for communities to run their own nodes or DVT clusters, as I mentioned before. Yeah, well, and ideally there's also well, kind of university courses that we can teach, or let's say mentor some professors to so that they can also further the education in nodes and staking in Ethereum with these courses. Yeah, that's pretty much what the overview of this well, problem of decentralizing the network geographically is, what it entails, and like what are the solutions that, well, we as a community are bringing, and how we are encouraging everyone to participate. And also a thank you to all the projects that are taking efforts in doing this, because we believe it's super important we hope we have shown you the importance of it, and hope you join in our efforts to decentralize the network geographically. Thanks.
I don't know if we have time for all. Yep.
You mentioned investing in infrastructure to improve P2P latency. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, this is actually information we got from a company called Sensei Node. They are institutional node runners in Latin America. They only run nodes in the region. And we were just chatting with them, and they said, like, well, when we started validating at a scale, for example, we saw a lot of missed attestations, just because the time period you have to test, combined with we can start to get into proposability separation and how nodes are incentivized to propose at the very last time, and on top of that, we have nodes at the very bottom of the earth, and that created a lot of latency and missed attestations. And as the Sensei was growing, they had more validators, they had more nodes, and the latency was going down. So I think it's very important to just invest and look into that. I don't think I have seen like any specific paper or something more deep in research. I think that'd be pretty cool, because as Andy said, there's a lot of counter incentives to decentralize the network geographically.
I would just add that it almost feels like there's some gravity of like the network coin into wherever most nodes are, and I think we need to be very mindful. How do we counterbalance that, right? So yeah, just great question.
Other questions? No?
Nope.
Okay.
Well,
thank you very much.
thanks.
And the next talk is going to be in